For Sunday, July 23rd, you found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda today, murder is down in the city of Atlanta. Mary Norwood leads the polls in the mayor's race. And in Gwinnett County, the Republicans have passed a tax increase. What's going on there? Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us on this Sunday. We're going to lead somewhat unconventionally with something that isn't news except it is news. In other words, the murder rate in Atlanta is down. And since we call the Atlanta police out all the time for their failings, it's nice to say, hey, good job, police.
Right.
Crime is up. Murders are down. Phil, what do you think?
You know, here's my take on it, and this is a great discussion for the people of Atlanta. Aggravated assaults and shootings are up. Let's start with that. I'm going to praise, and I've talked to a lot of cops on the beat, I'm going to praise Grady. One word, Grady. You know, some of these people, the criminals that normally would have died, have been, because of the good doctors and technology, have been saved. No, I'm actually serious, and I'd love to do a feature story on that for Insider Advantage. I've talked to some Grady people and some cops, and it is true. However, the shootings and the aggravated assaults are up, and I'm very concerned, and we all should be concerned. And even in some of the zones I've talked about, Zone 3, Grant Park, murders are up. So I'm glad to see that statistic.
Well, as usual,
I'm glad
on
to see
this
it.
topic, Phil is wrong, as he has been consistently.
But no,
the murder rate is way down in the city of Atlanta.
I'm not wrong about the shootings and the assaults.
Burglaries are way down in the city of Atlanta. Crime is down in the city of Atlanta. I think that we should give credit where credit is due, and that is to the new police chief, Erica Shields, and the mayor. And they've both been working hard to make this thing happen. They've taken thousands of guns off the street, and that's
where I was going. The key is targeting gun violence.
Yes, and also the targeting arrests. The new police chief, Erica Shields, has changed it from numbers to quality, and going after guns, going after felons, going after people who should be arrested, as opposed to, what is it, the typical just arrest to get the number, to make the number.
I wouldn't want to be the Atlanta police chief, because here we are praising her, all four of us.
Well, I'm going to be the contrarian
but
in a
you know
minute.
what? One highly visible homicide, and she's back in the soup. It's the sadness of that whole thing. But I bring it up because, you know, I'm always harping on Chicago. And if Erica Shields, the new police chief in Atlanta, can use computer technology targeting felons with guns, gun violence, to lower the homicide rate, why can't Chicago fix it? Now, let me lead to another thing. In reading up on this, I found something that actually shocked me, and I'm not easily shocked. DeKalb County has more homicides than Atlanta. Really? Jeff, aren't you shocked by that? I know DeKalb's bigger. People forget that DeKalb is bigger than Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, you know, DeKalb's got more people, so I'm not so terribly shocked by that. And the demographics are different, very different in DeKalb County now than they were 20, 30 years ago. But to get back to this issue with Erica Shields and removing guns, I mean, it is fundamental to getting the crime rate down. The numbers are just stark. From last year to this year, the number of guns that they've been able to get off the street and out of the hands of felons. And I think that that's why you're seeing this really significant reduction in crime overall. Look, we're in a mayor's race this year. Everybody's talking about the importance of public safety. It's number 1 or 2 on the list of all of the candidates, dozen candidates running, and you know, we've got something to show for it.
Let's go there.
Let me just talk about it. I'm going to be the contrarian again on the show. I think that yes, if we can reduce gun violence, we're all in favor of that. I'm in favor, and I think you are, of any tool that the police department can do in Atlanta or elsewhere. But here's where I have a problem with Chief Shields, and I'm going to be defending an officer named Quentin Green. Quentin Green, just to give you a quick story, was in 5 Points in June. He was taking down a career criminal. It was videotaped. According to police procedure, he did all of the proper things. He was, of course, the man was resisting arrest. He hit him in the ribs, which is allowed under police training procedures at the academy here in Atlanta, even a strike to the face when you're trying to handcuff him. what did Chief Shields do? Instead of backing the officer who did everything by the book, suspended him for 20 days. She wanted to fire him. Thank God she didn't. So I appreciate the Quentin Greens that have to be on the streets of Atlanta every day. They're not being supported. The police union is furious with the chief and has said so. I don't know if the mayor was involved. He ought to get involved, because this is a bad signal for policing on the street to suspend an officer. Even the defensive training people from the academy went to Chief Shields and said, don't do this. He followed everything by the book. Don't do this. So this is a bigger picture and a bigger problem here in Atlanta.
Well, but I'm going to disagree with you gently. I don't know that story, but I will say this. When DeKalb County has more homicides than Atlanta, then things are better in Atlanta. Now, Jeff, you mentioned the mayoral race, and that's where I was going next. In the most recent poll of the mayor's race, crime was listed as the major concern of Atlanta residents, but it wasn't very high. It was only like in the 20% range. It really wasn't a big number at all. It kind of surprised me. In fact, Atlanta seemed pretty happy. So, but the crime thing, elsewhere in the poll, most people felt safe in the city of Atlanta. I don't remember seeing a poll like that in years, do you?
That's right.
No.
It's the way things have changed, so that's all good. So let's go to that. Let's go to the pure politics of that. In that poll, Mary Norwood is shown, the city councilwoman, at 27%. Only other person in double digits was Caesar Mitchell, the city council president, at 10%. Then everybody closely grouped behind Caesar Mitchell. The number 2 position went to undecided.
Right.
That's me, by the way. I guess I'm number 2. But I don't know what to make of it. I think it means that Mary Norwood, at this point, seems likely to be in a runoff with
the anti-Norwood candidate, whoever that is.
At the number 2 person,
whoever
or
that
the undecided person.
Vincent Fort didn't show very well. You and I have thought he might be in the runoff.
Yeah, he was around 9. He was around 9. He was around 9.
Like
They're all grouped in there
single
together.
digits.
The thing about this, the last time I think there was a poll was in April. And the numbers, at least for those on the top range, really haven't moved at all. They're just static. I mean, she was at 28.5 or something like that. Mary was in the last, this was 3 months ago or so. And now she's at 27. We had that grouping right there around 9, 10 with Keisha, Kwanzaa, not Kwanzaa, he's moved up, but Keisha and Caesar, and that's still there. And then you've seen some movement with those who are at the very bottom. Peter Amon is up significantly.
Yeah, but you're talking 4 and 5%. Who cares?
Kathy is at 6. Kathy Woolard is at 6.
It doesn't count, does it? Come on.
Well, you know, we just don't know who's going to surge at this point.
That's a good point.
And the thing about it is, and the reason that there's been no movement, there's been lots of fundraising and very little movement in the polls, Phil, and it seems like folks just haven't tuned in yet.
I think Jeff's right about that, and I think you're right on with the numbers. I might remind you, and you all know this, that about this time in 2008 in the Atlanta mayor's race, Kasim Reed was at the bottom.
Yeah, he was in
He's at 30%.
And then he surged, to your point. So I think people are going to get focused in the next month or so, and you're seeing the fundraising.
Well, it's traditionally Labor Day.
But to your point, I think it's going to be Mary Norwood and the anti-Mary Norwood, whoever that is, in a runoff.
You know, obviously it's going to be hard to keep Mary Norwood out of a runoff. Mary Norwood has strength in every quadrant of the city. It's an amazing thing. You go over to the south side, you see Mary Norwood signs, as well as up in Buckhead. And so it's going to be really tough to keep her out of a runoff.
We've got to get out. I want to congratulate the group. I think this is a first all time on the Georgia Gang. We just talked for roughly 2.5 minutes about the Atlanta mayor's race.
And we didn't mention race.
We didn't mention race. Amazing. I kept. Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a sign that the electorate in the city has changed. The whole political calculus has changed. This is a new race.
Well, in Jeff's point, Mary Norwood does have significant minority support. Some of the other black candidates have some significant white support.
Of course they do.
And of course the
Isn't
city.
that great though?
The city population-wise is getting whiter, and so you're seeing that dynamic.
There we did it. Okay. All right.
But that's a fact.
Phil, you're exactly right.
Let me tell you something.
That's a factor.
Let me tell you something that hasn't changed in Atlanta. Department of clever segues coming up. Atlanta's city government still loves to give away money, and we'll talk about that when we get back.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
The city of Atlanta sometimes turns me into a populist. An example this week was when Invest Atlanta, which is a city development authority, voted to give $160 million in bonds to North American Properties to redo Colony Square. Now, you could say that one of the most sought-after addresses in the entire Southeast is Peachtree Street in Midtown. Right?
Right.
You got everything there. That's the show place.
14th, absolutely.
And we're going to give $160 million in bonds to a crummy developer, North American Properties, who builds nothing but substandard apartments and screws residents of neighborhoods.
What they doing down
Why are we going to do that?
They
Why are
must
we
have
doing
done
that?
something bad
Why
and done
can't
money.
private financing redo Colony Square? They have a fitness center. What about the other gyms? Do they get public subsidies?
You're
They get
making a
public
good
subsidies?
point.
What is this?
Yeah, they're picking winners and losers here.
Yes, exactly. It's wrong.
Well, excuse me, isn't that what happens all the time?
It shouldn't.
Public and private partnerships in buildings.
Giving
Isn't
rich
that what you
people money
promote
is
all the
not something
time?
government should do.
But that's not a public-private partnership. This is actually, picking a winner and loser who gets this tax money.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's different.
Wine
is.
bars, yoga
Different from SunTrust
classes, all
Park, different
subsidized by the
from,
taxpayers. Give me a break.
The stadium. Okay,
on
so
a
different.
really more serious topic, the city council this past week in Atlanta approved a $26 million bond for homeless people. United Way is going to kick in $15 million. Are we really doing this when the unemployment rate is the lowest in 12 years? It's down to 4.8%.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't we want to create an opportunity for those folks to participate in the economic recovery as well and to be able to go out and get a job? So many of them just have some underlying issues. So they need, it's not just a matter of housing, it's not just a matter of shelter, it's also a matter of the
A lot of times it's mental health issues.
It's mental health issues, it's drug abuse issues. It's having some warrant from 5 years ago that needs to be cleared up. And those kinds of social services available to homeless people can really help get them off the street and in the position to take some of those jobs that are available.
Right.
I actually agree. I think everybody on the right and the left and the middle agrees that that mental illness is an underlying problem.
Mental illness is a huge factor in urban camping. And substance abuse is another.
And you remember when President Jimmy Carter changed the rules back in his administration, and we sad to say, and a lot of experts are saying we should not have let out a lot of these mentally ill people.
Well, we could build them houses.
Well, the
Habitat for Humanity,
well,
could build
part
them all
of
houses.
the funding for this homelessness issue is to rehab 500 apartment units to get people off the street and back on their feet.
In Atlanta, they're closing that Pine Street facility too. So
Okay.
that's an impact.
Well, that's big. We didn't even mention that. You're right. That is going away. Let's turn to DeKalb County for a minute. I'm really surprised that the public school system in DeKalb County, has erected 7 billboards. Now, I haven't been able to track down the cost yet. But I will. Trust me on this. I'm going to find out what they cost.
Perhaps.
These are big, visible billboards in DeKalb County touting the virtues of the public schools. Pardon me, but are the DeKalb County schools competing with anyone? Why do they have to brand?
They are competing.
Why shouldn't they just be about
sure.
performance, Jeff?
Well, it is different, but I don't think that the DeKalb schools are going to be alone. I think that you're going to see other school systems do the same thing, to start touting the benefits that they provide and doing it in a traditional marketing kind of way and in branding. But if there's anything to fault about this particular effort, it is that it's not using students in these billboards. I mean,
It's about the superintendent.
How much motivation would that be if instead of using clip art or models that you are using actual students and putting them on these billboards, and it was sort of a competition, and the better you did in school, more likely you'd get on one of these billboards. And so I think that if you did those kinds of things, it could be really, really useful. It's sort of like the Grady campaign, where you see actual Grady patients saying, Grady saved my life, if it hadn't been for Grady, and you could do the same thing with the school system.
I'm glad you said Grady saved my life, because that goes to my point with the killings.
But see, the Grady patients got well. DeKalb has the largest number of underperforming schools in the state.
Well, I mean, let's say you had billboards with people who have been very successful, who went to Dunwoody High School or DSA.
The superintendent, Steve Green, says that he wants to control the narrative. That means he wants to control us, for one thing. And I want to point out to him, don't put up expensive billboards
Put the
when
money
you
in the
have the
classroom.
largest number of failing schools in the state of Georgia.
You know,
this is simple.
as
priority.
Phil is
schools.
well aware, you know, controlling the narrative is something that you tell your client, but it's not something that you put in a press release.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and I'm skipping that. I'm skipping that
Oh, well.
$100,000 pep rally that Steve Green is having. Just for the record, the new Democratic commission in Gwinnett County went ahead with its tax increase. 2 Republicans voted no. This is a Republican county, but I guess it's run by Democrats because they've raised the millage rate.
These are Republicans that you're referring to as Democrats that have raised the rate.
Hey, they raised
for
taxes.
the viewers, so viewers aren't confused.
They raise taxes. They look like Democrats. They talk like Democrats, right?
Well, and I think we need to go county by county here in the metro area where we're having tax increases. We discussed a little bit on DeKalb County last week, and there are others.
Well,
That revolution you're talking about might be brewing.
Real quickly, let's get one more thing in. I didn't have time for this the last few weeks because I didn't really believe it. The Forsyth County Commission is raising its pay. These are part-time county commissioners. I know Forsyth is a growing and vital county, but the commissioners there have passed an item that will raise their pay, or their successors' pay to be exactly accurate,
Can't do it.
from $34,900 a year to $48,000. Where do I sign up for that $48,000 part-time job? This
now, we
is
all know that these
outrageous.
jobs aren't part-time. You're
24/7 is what they are.
24/7, and you got
No,
social
no,
media,
that's
and you
a
got
Democrat view
emails.
of government.
I'm sorry.
That's not a Jeffersonian view of government. That's a Democratic view of government.
Well,
that
what-
everything's full-time and I got to be
Jeffersonian
paid
was-
more. Jeffersonian said,
was
go
a
till
believer
the
in
fields, go to
democracy.
Washington.
You're supposed
on.
to have staff and administrator that do
Exactly.
the day-to-day
You have a
work.
county manager
Yeah.
who does the
You know,
day-to-day.
this
Wow.
old practice, and it's an age-old practice, especially in Georgia, of part-time legislators and part-time commissioners in a growing urban environment where you have tremendous population growth and tremendous number of needs, and you still want to pay people $25,000 for
You
public
bet.
service. What kind of folks do you think you're going to get?
Well,
Right. Thank you.
the obverse of that, Jeffrey, and I'll have the last word here, is you have California, and you have Chicago, and you have Detroit. You want those things? Fine, go for full-time politicians. We got to get out. When we come back, the politics of the state, some of the statewide lineups are starting to shuffle. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
In a lot of ways, outside the governor's race in Georgia, politics statewide can be somewhat boring. Republicans have had a lock on every statewide office, public service commission, everything for years and years and years. Now comes a little bit of movement, Phil, in the sense that the 8-year insurance commissioner, a longtime incumbent, Ralph Hudgens, has decided to retire. That sets off the usual scramble among the state's constitutional officers, does it not?
Well, that's right. And what's going to happen with that very important slot, and Ralph Hudgens, I think, really made a name for himself as a consumer watchdog in calling out insurance companies, and I think he had good constituent service. So what's happening now is his deputy commissioner, Jay Florence, is going to run as a Republican. There'll be a Republican primary. Another former deputy commissioner, Jim Beck, who's well known in a lot of political circles, Republican, he's stepping in. I just spoke with him. And so there'll be a big Republican primary. And, you know, look out for the Democrats, too. I think there'll be a Democrat primary. An activist named Cindy Zeldin is getting in. So that's an important race. And if we're looking kind of at barometers on how Democrats are going to run a statewide campaign, look at that one. And, of course, there's also a Secretary of State
Right, because
opening.
Brian Kemp is running for
Right.
governor, that's
Right.
right.
So that's another opening. You'll see Democrats and Republicans.
Some very
Both on
capable
that.
Republicans in that Secretary of State's race. Buzz Brockaway from Gwinnett County.
That's right.
David Belisle, the mayor of Alpharetta,
That's
who's
right.
actually run something, you know.
And
But I wanna
Representative
go back
Brad Raffensperger has also
Raffensperger.
gotten in there.
I want to go back to the insurance commissioner, though.
And Josh McCoon.
Well, yes, we haven't even mentioned Josh McCoon, that's right.
So there's 4 Republicans right there in the Secretary of State's race.
But going back to the insurance commissioner, Ralph Hudgens essentially ceded power to the legislature. I mean, he basically can't contest rate hikes by insurance companies anymore. The job is somewhat not what it used to be.
Well, yes and no. I mean, they do have some power, you're right, but he can still speak out and he can still bar a massive rate hike that he feels is unnecessary. So there is some diluted power, you're right, but he still has some power.
All right, the lottery this week announced that it was handing over $1.1 billion into the state's treasury for pre-K and college tuition and so forth, but their sales are down. And they're facing some legislative pressure, I guess, to raise more money even though their sales are down. It's a tough equation the lottery folks have got to run. But it certainly is something the state can take great pride in. $1.1 billion.
Well, we can thank Zell Miller for this, and that's quite a record. Just as full disclosure, I do a little work with the lottery, but one of the problems is the lottery doesn't want to cut the prize money because they feel that the sales will go down, and so.
So what they do is they raise the price of the tickets.
You want to tell us
and
who
the
Zell
games.
Miller is?
You know, Zell Miller was our former governor who established hope, and you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
He got the lottery going.
He was the one, and I believe it was in 1991. You're actually right. Many people do not know who Zell Miller is.
That's exactly right.
Here's some more news.
But I tell you what, I will say this as a footnote to that. I think the establishment of the lottery as well as the establishment of the Atlanta airport were the two big things in the 20th century that really made Georgia the prosperous state that it
One
is.
of the things, and you mentioned Zell Miller, one of the things that Zell Miller stressed there was that all of the proceeds, all of the lottery proceeds,
they were walled off.
That they were walled off, that they were dedicated proceeds, and they were not going to go into the general fund.
And they've tried to switch
that's
that
what
from
has
time to
made
time.
it as successful as it is. Is that not all that money isn't going into the general fund and being spent on highways and other things. It's going to
what's
for
made
the
it
intended
successful
purpose.
is the chance to win $1 billion.
That's right.
Gotta get out.
If you don't have any money, it's
For you history buffs, Zell Miller was a governor, a lieutenant governor, and a U.S. senator.
And history.
And Henry Grady was the
professor.
newspaper editor. All right. They named Grady Hospital after him.
Thank you.
Making that point
Yes,
for you.
appreciate that.
When we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And please remember to join us on Facebook. Some lively conversations in the last week there on the Georgia Gang. And we'll begin winners and losers now with Jeff.
Oh, thank you, Dick. Well, we mentioned crime in Atlanta being down. I think that Erica Shields clearly is a winner for that. Mayor Young, man, okay, now I go back 30 years. Mayor Reed. So they're both winners for getting those numbers down significantly. I think that that's terrific. And also for Mayor Reed, a new plan, public-private partnership, possibly involving Invest Atlanta and the Atlanta Housing Authority at the Civic Center, getting some affordable housing over there in Civic Center. You mentioned the Peachtree and Pine is going to be closing down. It's very significant for that area, as well as having a sort of a multi-purpose facility there at the Civic Center, getting it sold, as the mayor has done successfully on so many other city properties.
You could have North American Properties build affordable housing in Colony Square. Alexis, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to salute two giants who we lost in this past week. One is Moses Norman. He was a longtime Atlanta educator, dean of Clarkdale University. He actually taught me English one summer in the Morehouse Spelman pre-college program. He was a tremendous educator.
He did a good job, I can tell.
He did a good job.
He did a good job, thank you. And Branch Currington, he died this week. He was the first black certified tennis pro, and he ran the Washington Park Tennis Center for 25 years, and he taught a lot of people how to play tennis, including some folks in my family. And both of them will be missed. And then finally, I want to salute the Tulips. It's a new rock band out of Atlanta, and they were recognized by Blavity as the creator of the day. So congratulations to the Tulips. So y'all need to go look them up on YouTube.
You feel old now? Go ahead, all right.
All right, I've got a loser, the city of Atlanta. You may have seen the news where they are suing Paulding County over a second commercial airport. And you know, this is about the only major city in the country that really doesn't have a second commercial airport. I'm for competition. You get a second airport, you'll get better fares in Atlanta. But and it's kind of a superfluous suit because Paulding County, they put the airport on hold for right now. But anyhow, I am am going to make
Make
as
sure
my
it
winner.
stays that way.
I am going to make as my winner the officer Quentin Green, who was unfairly suspended just for doing his job, following all of the procedures that he learned in his training at the Atlanta Police Academy. So Chief Erica Shields is my loser. This is a negative impact on the Atlanta Police
I
Force.
thought you were going to mention
right.
Ann Coulter. Isn't she your loser?
I will send a shout out to Emory St. Joseph's Hospital, where they've been taking good care of my family this last couple of weeks. And out of nowhere, Todd Ream, we don't talk about him because he's a behind the scenes guy. But you know what? His daily newsletter on politics and policy has a real place in tracking issues, not being so much disturbed by the headlines. He's the one where I get most of my information on all these Democrats raising taxes in the state of Georgia.
Don't
He does a
forget to
good
read
job.
Insider Advantage,
You mean
too.
Republicans?
Well, but Todd, yeah, no, you do it.
Republicans raising taxes.
No, when they raise taxes, they're Democrats.
Oh, they switch.
They-
I make them switch.
He renames
make 'em
them.
switch.
He renames
All right, we got to get
them.
out. By the way, the Falcons are going to have $2 hot dogs in the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Look out.
$2 hot dogs. Cool, huh? All right. See you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.